We have been doing fractions, and because I want to make it simple, I always treat it heading by heading so that it becomes simple to understand. And this session, we are going to learn something on word problems under fraction, which is called fraction spent and fraction left. And at the end of this lesson, you should be able to know how to find your fraction spent, your fraction left, and your total salary. And also, once you know your total salary or money, they can ask you to find a value for a certain item. So I will show you this by illustrating it using an example. Now we have fraction spent and fraction left. Fraction spent and fraction left. Always note that your total fraction, your total fraction is equal to 1. Total fraction is equal to 1. And to get our total fraction, it comprises of fraction spent plus our fraction left is equal to 1. So always the total fraction comprises of fraction spent and fraction left. And once you add these two components, we will get 1. So to get your fraction left from this formula, fraction left, it becomes 1 minus, once this crosses the equals, it becomes negative. 1 minus fraction spent. So always in the question, if they ask you to find your fraction left or remainder, another word, remainder is 1 minus your fraction spent. Now let us take questions on this session. Adjoa has money. She spends 2/3 of the money on food. Find the fraction left. Now this is the fraction Adjoa spends on food. They are asking you to find the fraction left. And to find your fraction left, the formula is 1 minus your fraction spent. So it's 1 minus the fraction spent is 2/3. So we should now work this one out. And to solve this one, there are two approaches to solve this one. We always change this one whole number to the same numerator and same denominator using this denominator. So this one will become 3/3 minus 2/3. If here was supposed to be 5, this one whole number will be changed to same numerator and same denominator by making it 5/5. If here was 6, it will become 6/6. So that if it cancels itself out, it becomes one whole number. Our LCM here is 3. 3 goes into 3, 1. 1 times 3 is 3. Minus 3 goes into 3, 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So we have 1/3. This is one approach to solve fraction left. This one. That's how we will get this 1/3. Or you ask yourself, you see we are having 2/3. You take this fraction. What number should be added to this 2 for us to get this 3? You see it's 1. 1/3. If you are given something 1 minus 4/6, you ask yourself, what number should be added to this 4 to give you 6? It's what? 2. Because 4 plus 2 is 6 over this denominator. Once you work this one out in the fraction form, you will get this 2/6. 1 minus 6/10. What number should be added to 6 for us to get 10? It's what? 4/10. This is the simplest way to work this out. Let us take question 2. Our second question. Castro was given an amount of money. He spent 1/4 and 2/6 on food and rent respectively. Find the fraction spent, II, the fraction left. Now the key word here is respectively. And what I mean by respectively is that this 1/4 is for food and 2/6 is for rent. Suppose I gave you the third fraction as 1/5 on entertainment, then 1/5 will go for entertainment. So now, you see we are giving us two main fractions. So for us to get our fraction spent, you add these two fractions. So fraction spent now becomes the fraction spent on food and rent. So it's 1/4 plus 2/6. So we find our LCM, and LCM is 12. 4 goes into 12, how many? 3. 3 times 1, 3. Plus 6 goes into 12, 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So we have 7/12. That's our fraction spent. To get our fraction left, it is 1 minus our fraction spent, because we know our total fraction is always equal to 1. So it's 1 minus 7/12. And this time I'll use the simplest approach. What number should be added to this 7 for us to get 12? It's what? 5. Because 7 plus 5 is what? 12. So it's 5 over this denominator, which is 12. And once you work it out in the fraction form too, you are getting the same answer. You get the same answer. This is the simplest method. I want it to be simple. That's why I'm using simple approach for us to get our fraction left. In case they give you 3 fractions and they ask you to find your fraction spent, you add that 3 fractions and you solve for your fraction spent. If they give you 4 fractions too, you add the 4 fractions up and you find your fraction spent. So now let's move on to our third example. Now we are moving on to our third example. Emina spends half of her salary on food and 1/5 on entertainment. If she still has 600 cedis left, how much was her salary? Now they have given you an amount left and they want you to find a total salary that Emina has. So Emina spends half of her salary on food and 1/5 on entertainment. So to get our fraction spent, it becomes simple. You just add this half to 1/5. So question 3, fraction spent is equal to 1/2 plus 1/5. And we know our LCM to be 10. 2 goes into 10, 5. 5 times 1, 5. Plus 5 goes into 10, 2. 2 times 1, 2. So we have 7/10. That's our fraction spent. Total fraction spent on food and entertainment. We now want to find her salary, her total salary. And to get your total salary, you must find your fraction left. Because always fraction left is equal to money left. So fraction left is equal to 1 minus this fraction spent. So you ask yourself, what number should be added to this 7 for us to get 10? It's what? 3. Because 7 plus 3 is what? 10 over this denominator, which is 10. You see, I've made it simple how to find your fraction left. For us to get our salary, that's how much was Emina's salary, is your fraction left. Fraction left is equal to money left. And we know our fraction left now is 3/10, equal to what is our money left here? It's 600 cedis. So 600 cedis. For us to get the salary, eminent salary, you turn this one upside down. There are two main approaches. So it's 10 over 3 times this 600. 3 goes here 1, 3 goes here 200. And 200 times 10, we are getting 2,000 cedis. This is Emine's total salary. So always note that your fraction left is equal to money left. And our fraction left here is 3 over 10. And amount left is 600 cedis. And to solve this, I am saying we are having two approaches. You turn this one upside down. So it becomes 10 over 3 times 600 cedis. 3 goes here 1, 3 goes here 200. 200 times 10 is 2,000 cedis. Or the second approach. So this is salary. The second approach is that you multiply the fraction left. Multiply the fraction left by a total salary equal to this amount left, which is 600 cedis. So the second approach, you always choose a variable for the total salary and you multiply the fraction left by the total salary and you equate it to the amount left. So we have 3 over 10 times k equal to 600 cedis. We multiply through by this 10. So it becomes 10 times 3 over 10 times k. There is no need to multiply this k2 by 10 because addition and subtraction is used to separate terms, and this time we are not having no addition and subtraction here. It's multiplication. So this is just one term equal to 600 times 10. This will cancel this. 3 times k, we are having 3k equal to 6,000. And once we are having this, we divide through by the coefficient of k, which is 3. So 3 goes here 1, 3 goes here 2,000. We have 2,000 cedis, where our k is equal to our salary. So why don't you use this simple approach? Because once you know fraction left is equal to money left, you just turn this fraction upside down and you multiply it by your amount left. We are getting the same answer. The same answer, 2,000, 2,000. So you choose the simplest method to solve your total salary. Let us take the last question. Our last question. John spends half of her salary on rent. John spends half of his salary on rent. It's his, not her. He spends 2/3 of the remainder on food. If he still has 400 cedis left, how much was his salary? Here too, they have asked you to find John's salary. And for us to solve this question, you see now, they have given us one fraction on salary and one fraction too is on remainder. The key word here is remainder. One fraction is on rent and one fraction is on what? Remainder. So what you must do is that this remainder, what they mean is that once they have given you half of a salary on rent, they want you to subtract this half from 1. This half, you subtract it from what? 1, and that will be the remainder. Half. So it becomes 1 minus what? 1 over 2. And 1 minus 1 over 2, so remember, 1 minus 1 over 2 is what? 1 over 2. Because what number should be added to this for us to get 2 is what? 1 over the denominator. And once we know our remainder, they are saying he spends 2 over 3 of the remainder on food. So fraction spent on food. Fraction spent on food is equal to 2 over 3 of the remainder. What is the remainder? The remainder as 6. We subtracting this one from 1. So it becomes times half, because of means multiplication. 2 over 3 of the remainder. This 2 will cancel this 2. We are having what? 1 over 3. So we now have our fraction spent on food. And our fraction spent on rent too is what? Half. It is half. So for us to get our total fraction, it becomes our fraction spent. Fraction spent becomes this 1 over 2. That's the fraction spent on rent, which is 1 over 2, plus the fraction spent on food, 1 over 3. We add that total fractions. So to solve this one, what is the LCM? 6. 2 goes into 6, 3. 3 times 1, 3. Plus 3 goes into 6, 2. 2 times 1 is 2. We are having 5 over 6. Now, this is our fraction spent on rent and food. You move on to your fraction left. Fraction left. And always, once we know our fraction spent, you subtract this one from 1. It becomes 1 minus 5 over 6. You ask yourself, what number should be added to this 5 for us to get 6? It's what? 1 over this denominator, which is 6. This is our fraction left. And once we know our fraction left and money left, always the fraction left is equal to money left. And our fraction left here is 1 over 6 equal to money left. They gave you 400 cedis. So as I always say, you turn this one upside down. It becomes 6 over 1 times 400 cedis. 6 times 400, we are getting 2,400 cedis. This is the simplest method. I don't want you to use this long approach. I don't want this approach. Even though you can use it, but it's complicated. So why don't you turn this fraction upside down and multiply it by the money left? So we have a second method for us to get how much was his salary. We are having a second method, and that second method, you use table. You will use table to solve it. I want us to try that one too, but this is the simplest method. We have a second approach for solving a question like this when they give you a fraction of the remainder. So let us use that second approach, whether you get the same 2,400. So you draw your table, fraction spent and fraction left. Fraction spent, fraction left. So our fraction spent on rent here is half. And fraction spent on food, we have 2 over 3. What you must do is that you subtract this half from 1. We are getting what? 1 over 2. You subtract this 2 to third from 1. We are getting, you get 1 over 3. 1 over 3. So you take this fraction, you subtract it from 1. We are getting half. You take this to third. You subtract it from 1. You are getting what? 1 over 3, because always total fraction is what? 1. So for us to solve this, you multiply these two fractions. It becomes half times 1 over 3. And for multiplication of fraction, you multiply the numerator and you multiply the denominators. So it becomes 1 over 2 times 3 is what? 6. You see now we are having this 1 over 6. And this 1 over 6 is our fraction what? Left. Is our fraction left. This 1 over 6. And I said fraction left is equal to money left. So our fraction left here is 1 over 6. And money left is 400 cedis. So you turn this upside down. 6 over 1 times 400 cedis. We are getting 2,400 cedis. You see, we are getting the same answer as the first approach. So why don't you go for the first approach? Because this one, if you don't take care, it will confuse. But this one too is very simple. So I believe I've made fraction spent and fraction left very simple. And this brings us to the end of this session.